There's a new way to sell domain names, and it includes a whole new pool of affluent buyers. If you want to learn about it and determine if your domain names might be a good fit, and learn how to price 2-letter, 3-letter, or 2-number, 3-number domain names, stay tuned. This is the show you do not want to miss. I have 3 short sponsor messages before we get into today's show. First, if you're a domain name investor, you have unique intellectual property needs, and you need an IP attorney that understands them, that follows the industry, and can help you navigate UDRP, copyright, and trademark laws. David Westlow of Wiley Ryan is the lawyer to call for internet legal issues. Second, if you have a great domain name and nothing to show when people visit, you're missing out on potential advertising revenue, leads, and partnership opportunities. NicheWebsites.com can build your site quickly with a price option to suit any need. But as their tagline says, they don't just build websites, they build businesses. Finally, if you're buying or selling a domain name or a portfolio and you want an estimate of its value, Estimate.com is the place to go. Just like you'd visit Zillow.com to get an estimate of a house value, Estimate.com provides key information about the most important statistics so you can make an informed decision based on data. All 3 sponsors have a clickable banner in the upper right-hand corner of DomainSherpa.com. Here's your program. Hey everyone, my name is Michael Seiger and I'm publisher of DomainSherpa.com, the website where you come to learn how to become a successful domain name investor and entrepreneur directly from the experts. Today we're going to learn about domain name pricing, but not any type of domain names. We're going to learn about 2-letter, 3-letter, 2-number, and 3-number domain names. For example, the domain name 114.com just sold for $2.1 million in July 2013. But I'm thinking that's an exception and not the rule. Today we're going to find out. Joining us to help us understand pricing and share a new way to sell domain names is Aron Meystedt, founder and director of the intellectual property division of Heritage Auctions. Aron, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
It's great to have you here. So, Aron, we're going to talk about domain name valuations at Heritage Auctions, your new employer. But I think most people know you from your August 2009 domain name purchase. So I want to start with a little bit of background so people know how you fit into the domain name industry. What makes that purchase? What was that purchase and what makes it so significant?
I'm sure you're alluding to the Symbolics purchase.
Symbolics.com.
Yeah, Symbolics.com. It's the first .com ever registered on the internet, and it was taken by the Symbolics Computer Corporation back in March of 1985. And just being in the domain business, a lot of us have always known that that was the first one ever.
Right.
And just, it was quite perfect timing because I know dozens of people that have reached out to the company wanting to inquire about the name and buying it, and they always just blew it off. And about the time that they decided they didn't want to sell it was about the day I picked the phone up and called them. So just one of those serendipitous God things, perfect timing just came together. The company was looking for some money, and I bought it kind of just as, kind of a trophy piece, but also legitimacy. I mean, it helps get my foot in the door places saying, I'm Aron, I actually own the first .com. And then the conversation kind of, wait, what? Are you sure? And then I explained there's 250 million registered names. That was the first one taken. So it's really neat. I'm really honored to have it. And quite honestly, a lot's changed since that domain journal story.
Yeah. So that was the very first time that you reached out to the registrant of Symbolics, and they said, yeah, we actually are? You didn't reach out to them like 10 times before?
I literally picked the phone up and called them and expected no thanks, we've heard this a million times, and got a, you know what, we were just talking about selling the name to raise some money, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. And then once I found out it was doable price-wise, I mean, I'm not a billionaire, so it was just complete perfect timing, and it was one of those, I'll pick it up and worry about what to do with it later, or something will present itself. So.
Right. Well, talk about fate. I always look at situations like that and I said, it's meant to be. If I contacted them right when they were interested in selling it. But the problem that I always have when I reach out to people is that if they are interested in selling it, they usually have been contacted by a number of other people, just like you said, Symbolics.com was. And then they say, so we're going to offer it for sale, make your best and final offer by this date. And then I end up, negotiating against or putting in a higher bid than I probably would. They didn't do that with you?
Not really. I think they did follow up on a few other leads that they'd had in the recent months and kind of put it out there for a bidding situation. And the people involved in the story know that I had the top bid. They gave everybody like a couple days that they had heard from in the last month to put in another bid, and there was really no other bids. And they even gave me right to beat the top bid at the end of the few days. So it was one of those perfect situations, and I don't really know why they felt so just highly of me, like, let's give this guy a chance. I think, and it's a lot of people give the advice that if you're serious, it's smart to put a number down. Just instead of being like, I'm interested, say, here's what I'm thinking. I mean, I have the money, I'll pay now. And that usually gets a long way because, I mean, I send out a lot of inquiry emails and stuff, and especially 3 and 4 years ago, I mean, I was sending out 100 a day on names that I would want. And just, you get a couple that are priced right, and you show that you're serious, and, you can get a hold of some pretty good names.
Yeah, but I'm always hesitant. If I throw out a number that's too high, they're going to think that, that's halfway of where I'm willing to go. How do you throw out a number that's high enough to show you're serious, but doesn't get them to think crazy numbers? Like, I'm throwing out 10,000. They think they should get $1 million for it, or 100,000.
I usually start about at half of what I think I'd want to pay. I don't want to lowball and be like 10%. Like, here's a two-letter.com. I'd probably pay $100,000 for it. Let me see if they'll take 15. I mean, that's just idiotic, but
yeah,
say 50 or 60, and they'll know I'm at least in the conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm flexible to go up a little more, but I usually start about half. Then if it's an instant yes, it's a home run. If it goes back and forth, I'm still in the game. That's just what's worked for me in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's worked for everybody else, but that's done pretty good.
So on Symbolics.com, did you offer half of what you thought it was worth, and then you negotiated back and forth and went higher on the final sales price?
I think I just threw out a number because that's kind of hard to evaluate, and I threw out a number, and it was pretty much what I bought the thing for. I mean, they were wanting some money. The company was restructuring, and they've since done other things now, and they were just like, yeah, that sounds fine. Let me get back to you. And I mean, like, I didn't sleep for a couple of days. I was like, is this seriously going to happen? I mean, and again, I mean, to some people, it's a kind of a cool name, but to others, it's like, you know what, that's really cool. It's kind of like the first Model T to roll off the line. I mean, it's not quite that amazing, but I mean, it's pretty cool to have, and I'm honored to have it, very happy to have it.
Yeah. How much did you pay for it, Aron?
Can't tell you. We signed an NDA, and honestly, I really don't kiss and tell with many of my names what I'm buying or selling. If you're on the buying end, it really hurts you down the road, and if I'm on the selling end, you know what, I don't really need the praise and notoriety. I mean, I've sold a lot of two-letter.coms and stuff like that would make sales lists, and very few of them have been public. It's just personal policy of mine,
Yeah. So you purchased this domain name relatively soon after you entered the domain name industry. I read Ron Jackson's cover story about you, of how you sort of changed directions in your life, looking for a profession that really appealed to you, that you enjoyed doing, that you had success in. I think we all bounce around from thing to thing. I went to school as a nuclear engineer, and I'm not doing that nowadays. But you ended up in domain names, and I'm going to assume that you paid a pretty penny for Symbolics.com just because it was the first domain name ever registered. Where did you, get the money to purchase a high-value domain name when you were bouncing around from profession to profession?
Yeah, in high school and college, I tell everybody I always scheduled my classes at 8, 9, and 10 in the morning, and I'd run home to like little internet businesses that I had, and I would import like from China like watches and shoes and stuff like that, and I ran a bunch of little mini businesses, just kind of the serial entrepreneur, or maybe ADD. I just got to change direction and always do something different. So I kind of built up, made a little bit of baby businesses and sold them and stuff like that. And then thought, you know what, just buying and selling the domain names would be really easy. Nothing to ship. It's really clean. And I wish I'd had that thought back in like 95, 96, but, late to the game, whatever.
Right.
So.
And instead of buying things for, $5 from China and selling them for $50, you're buying things for $1,000 and selling them for $5,000. So just the scale goes up, but the profit goes up too.
Yeah, it was a gradual progression. And then I kind of really jumped in when I bought XF because I knew I wanted a two-letter because of the finite 676 amount of them and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I really jumped in. But I had some sales that I kind of got going with before then.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Great. And now you're working for Heritage Auctions. Who is Heritage Auctions? I've never heard of them.
Heritage Auctions is the third largest auction house in the world. We have double the internet traffic of Sotheby's and Christie's combined.
Wow.
The internet platform is unbelievable. And I know that's been a problem with like domain auctions in the past, that we're trying to integrate online bidding and it crashes and it's dependent on the hotel room and everything else. And that's really the forte of the company, is their internet technology. Heritage will sell around $1 billion worth of merchandise this year. We have the home offices in Dallas with about 500 employees. We've got an office in Beverly Hills and San Francisco, New York, and a presence in Europe as well. So it's a company that sells across 30 or so categories of fine art, gold, currency, comic books. And it really started out as like a numismatic, like coin and gold business, and it's really just grown. And their MO has been find an expert in a category, let them run with the category, and to see what we can build it into. And the category previous to domain names, which is what I'm doing, is handbags. And they've got a kid in New York that's selling $6 or $7 million worth of handbags every year because they pull an entrepreneur, give them the resources to be successful, and just let them run with it. So it's quite an opportunity. Very fortunate and thankful for it too.
That's awesome. So I read in your bio on the HA.com website that you're a big vintage sneaker fan. So, vintage sneakers have a pretty high sales price also. How did you decide between like going domain names, intellectual property with them, and just representing their sneaker division?
I'm trying to tell them, I'm like, there's a huge market for these shoes. I probably have, I got some on right now.
Those are vintage right there.
Those are vintage Jordans.
Why are you wearing them?
I don't know, because I'm nuts, because I got a ton of them. But I was telling them, I'm like, guys, these shoes are worth a fortune. If anything, let's open a boutique in Dallas. But the cool thing is the founders of the company are entrepreneurs. I mean, like crazy. We totally gelled on my interview, was pretty much hired on the spot.
That's awesome.
They're open for anything. I mean, it's so awesome. Yeah, sure, we'll open it if it's feasible and it's not a waste of money. They're down for it, which is really why I'm there, because they give me an opportunity to be entrepreneurial, kind of in a controlled setting, using their resources, which is a dream, because I've had web developers and programmers and stuff that I've outsourced to, and I don't know how many times I've sat home at midnight and thought, I wish I had some people just standing around me that I could bounce ideas off of or develop something, and I finally have that, so it's very exciting.
Yeah, well, I think anybody in the domain name industry that has a portfolio would kill to have 800,000 people in their database that they know have, exhibited interest or purchased something in the past and are relatively affluent and have a technology that could support some sort of auction, right? Like people can maybe create the technology, but they don't have the readership, or maybe they have great readership, but their technology just doesn't work. It's great. So how did you even become aware that Heritage Auctions was looking at the domain name intellectual property division?
Right along the lines of how Symbolics was acquired, things just seemed to fall in my lap, and I've attributed it to God's favor, but I don't know wherever you stand on those type of situations. That's just the way my life has been. I moved to Dallas a little over a year ago, and I was in grad school for business at Southern Methodist University. Thought I'd want to get out of Missouri. Let's do something different. I'll go to grad school, kind of get plugged into a business-friendly environment. Long story short, the kid that sat next to me in my very first class is best friends growing up with one of the founders of the company's sons, like every day over at their house, blah, blah, blah. So he was trying to do a project, found out that I'm kind of a domain expert of sorts, and we just built a friendship. And he passed my name to Heritage saying, is there anything you want to do with this guy? I mean, he seems really sharp with domains. And the owners of the company said they've been wanting to do it for about 6 years. They've been wanting to jump in the domain space.
Right.
They don't do things on their own. They get an expert locally that can kind of walk them through everything, and they give them the resources to run with it. So it was a serendipitous, amazing just coincidence that the guy that sat next to me introduced me to the company. And again, we hit it off from day one, the interview at Heritage. So
yeah, I love stories like that, because it's not just the one event that you happen to talk about domain names. And it's not the one event that you happen to sit next to each other. It's not the one event that you happen to go to Southern Methodist and you happen to decide to take an 8 a.m. class rather than, sleeping in and take the 11 a.m. class like I did in my, college career. And, and it goes, the chain goes back and back. And you got to figure like at some point, some things are meant to be. But that's cool that Heritage Auctions looks for the experts, looks in the Dallas area so they have some control and then uses their resources, their technology, their proven methodology, and they just bring in an expert to fill in the what's of value.
Definitely. And we sat down and I said, guys, I really love being an entrepreneur and making my own hours. And I've been doing it for the last 8 years or so. And, they've promised and they've fulfilled it to make my life and job as entrepreneurial as I want it to be. And they've explained the sky is the limit here for building whatever we want to build. And honestly, I've probably in my professional life on my own, I've kind of plateaued. I mean, you can only buy and sell so many names before you're looking to how do I make this bigger and what do I do? So it's a great opportunity. It's a challenge. It's very exciting.
Well, definitely. And if you're an entrepreneur, you love the thrill of the kill, right? You love to buy a big domain name, get that rush. Am I going to be able to sell it and then sell it? And it's more of the rush, and the monetary aspect may just be sort of a stripe on your shoulder, but that's not, if you're successful, that's not necessarily the end all be all. And being able to start this up at Heritage Auctions, I'm sure makes you feel the same way, not just with the domains that you're buying, which you're capped at unless you grow it into a large corporation, but now you get to bring in a whole bunch of other domains and sell them to people who never realized that they were a valuable asset class before.
Yeah, it's the challenge and the whole process that gets me excited and gets me going in the morning. I mean, money only takes you so far. I mean, you can make $20 million a year and absolutely hate what you do for a living and wake up miserable, or you can get involved in something that you really believe in with a group of guys you love to be with. And I mean, I walk in the office every day and think, God, this is awesome. What an opportunity. I'm excited. And, the monetary potential is still there, but that's not really what motivates me. And I think a lot of people can relate to that,
Definitely. So you said Heritage Auctions is going to do $1 billion this year. Was that the right number?
Yeah, they're going to sell about $1 billion worth of goods. I just went to their comic book auction, and you never know who's on the phone or in the room or on the internet. It's crazy. The Batman #1 comic book, they had the first appearance of Batman, graded a 9.2, which is the highest one ever. Sold for $500,000. I mean, like I mentioned, there's 850,000 registered bidders, and I don't want to make this a big commercial for Heritage Auctions, but you never know who's on the phone or who's eyeing what you have with money, who's thinking that's exactly what I want. I mean, these people have money they want to put places. There was a guy in the room wearing sweatpants who bid $400,000 on the on the Batman thing. I was like, really? He was sitting with his kid eating snacks and stuff. I mean, just 400, and then 450 is like, nah, I'm out. And I'm like, I'd be sweating, So
yeah.
It's awesome. They've got a great network, a great reach, and that's something that I've been wanting the domain industry to tap into for a long time, and it just seemed, it's a perfect fit.
So how big do you anticipate the domain name sales and intellectual property division can become for HA.com?
Yeah, the thing we're doing is we've decided this is a marathon, not a sprint, so we want to start it the right way. We want to get names that will sell, not just any auction house. We want names to sell because we want to make money. We want names that'll sell to keep this buyer base interested, thinking, God, these are really awesome. I mean, if you put a bunch of names in at $5 million and, wow, that gets a lot of press, but you don't sell anything and it kind of fizzles out at the end of the day, kind of what's the point,
Totally, yeah.
So when we have our first auction or event, I'm going to put a couple of names of mine in there, There's a lot of people that are already on board. I spent the last week reaching out to a lot of domain owners, and it's about half and half. 100% know that this is great for the industry, that we could bring in a lot of new money and investors. Some people are curious to see how it goes the first time, which I 100% understand. There's no pressure. I'll take the other half, and we're going to run with it, and then maybe we can all work together eventually. So
yeah, I'm a bit surprised that everybody isn't on board. I don't think there's a single person in the industry that wouldn't want to become mainstream, domain names to become mainstream, that domains to become, on par with Forex and gold and, different types of currencies and stocks. Like, who wouldn't want that?
I know. I think everybody's on board for what this represents and what it could bring. Some
Yeah.
people kind of want proof of concept.
Mhm.
Like, let's see how the first domain auction goes. And I'm
Sure.
like, well, we got 30 other categories that are killing it. But again, I'm not a hard sell type person. It's
Yeah.
like, let's work together down the road. Some people don't want to be the early adopters. They
Right.
just want to jump in after it's rolling
Yeah.
good. But the other half is like rock and roll. I can't wait to do this and put X.com, not
Yeah.
X.com, but put my name in front of who knows. And the 850 user base is just the beginning. I mean,
Right.
the marketing and PR teams are incredible. And when you can do an auction tied to some awesome item in the lot, that's when they can really spread the news. Like this Batman comic that they had was paired with an original work of art from the Batman comics. The first time the guy sketched out what the Dark Knight would look like, and they
Right.
sold that piece of paper for well over $500,000. And so that spread the news like
Yeah.
every.
Yeah, I was just thinking there's no reason why if you're at a comic book convention, you can't sell the domain name superheroes.com or some
Right.
sort of generic that some collector or some, you know, comic book store or chain might want to have as, you know, their centerpiece online.
And there's businessmen in the fold, there's collectors, there's investors, I don't want to say you never know who we're going to reach because I know the type of people that it is, but you really never know who's going to show up, pick up the phone, call, bid, and that's kind of what's exciting to me because nothing against the domain auctions that we have right now, but it's kind of the same buyers, and I'm wanting to tap into a new group of people. I want to bring in new people, like you said. It's make it kind of a legit asset class like gold or real estate or stocks or anything like that. Just and educate the people that, hey, these are a good store of value. They appreciate in value. You can make money with them passively. There's a lot of good benefits, and there's a finite number of really premium .coms, which I know Frank and Jeff Gabriel allude to in their domain video that they have on domainnamesales.com. That's a great video that just shows, hey, there's a finite number of truly premium names, and that scarcity is what drives the value up.
So what type of domain names are you looking for, Aaron?
I think that like the 2 and 3 letter and the 2 and 3 number names would be very easy to tell investors that this is the value because of their finite nature and comparable sales and some historical sales, like you've mentioned, the 114.com, which are kind of outliers. But I think it's easy to say, look, every 2letter.com is sold for between 125 and X, so if you could pay on the low end of this and there's only 676 of them in existence, I think that would be something worth buying. And it would honestly be something that I wouldn't mind recommending to somebody to buy. There's a lot of 3word.infos and stuff that, hey, we all like making money, but I couldn't in good conscience pass this along to an investor. So names like that, 1 and 2 word, like product, service, category names like that, and even like generic names. Like I saw elephant.com on TV the other day as insurance, and I had no idea. And I'm like, that's a great generic name. It's like Amazon, names like that. So I think we can get a good inventory for this first auction, and the response has been great so far.
Cool. So what is the typical commission for running a domain name in your auction?
And that's good that we can cover all this now. The standard in the industry of Christie's and Sotheby's is 15% from both ends. So 15% buyers premiums, 15% seller's fee. And that's higher than what we're used to doing. But, the 15% on the seller's end is normal. We do that with brokers. But it's because we spend so much money and advertising and promotion getting the event out there that, we kind of got to make it worthwhile. But the founders of Heritage have really given me leeway to get some early people in and try to offer some incentives. So any big players that want to consign a lot of names over the first couple of years, we're willing to be flexible on those numbers. And again, they want to make it work. They want it to be successful. And it's less about just making a killing and more about just kind of having a presence in this industry and seeing where it goes from there.
So let me see if I understand that, because I didn't understand the 15% on the buying and the selling side. If I sell a domain name for $100,000 through one of your auctions, do I walk away with $70,000 or do I walk away with $85,000?
As the seller, you walk away with 85. You pay 15%, and another 15% comes from the buyer's end. So the final price will actually be 115 with the buyer's premium. They'll tack a 15% buyer's premium on, and that kind of took me aback at first. Like, I'm gonna do that as a buyer, but the mentality is that the bidders they bid what they want, and that's just a fee at the end that they're totally used to paying. Again, it's a different type of clientele. It's a different type of mindset and investor that are used to doing that. That Batman comic that went for 500 grand, there's an extra 75 or whatever it is on top of it. That it's just, well, whatever. That's just the fee part of doing business. So that's standard. And I think we can play with the seller's fees a little bit to try to entice people to consign with us.
Sure. And will the registrants, the people who are selling domain names, have to sign exclusivity with you in order to get them in an auction? I
think so, because that's something Heritage really prides itself on: transparency, honesty, integrity. If you go to the About page, there's, the ethics, and it's a great company. The worst thing in the world that could happen for Heritage is to sell a name and somebody in the domain owner to be like, oh, well, we sold that a month ago. And that would completely tarnish our reputation. Or, and I kind of changed my mind. I was hoping to get 150, but it went for 130. And so we can't have anybody pull back anything like that, because you have a couple of those and then there's no confidence in the marketplace whatsoever. So they will have to do exclusivity, but we're not looking out years from now. If we have an auction event, it'll be 3 or 4 months from now. So it's typical, and hey, give us a few months to promote this thing and see what press we can get this covered in. So it's a few month agreement. Yeah. So when will the first auction take place? Do you have a date set yet? We were thinking about later in the fall, towards mid-November. I'm friends with Rick Schwartz, and we didn't want to step in on the traffic auction, which is in October, and we're trying to, work together, and there may be even ways for us to help out with that auction in the future, bring in what we can to the table. So we wanted to do it after his, not to step on his toes and do it the week before or something, and so there's no conflict there. We're thinking late November. But we're going to see how the next month pans out with consignments. I'm going to consign names until about September 1st and then do 2.5 months straight of promotions. But if the consignments by September 1st don't go as we have planned, then we'll push it back until the first of the year. So I'm not under the gun to get this thing rolling immediately, but I anticipated wide acceptance from domain owners and excitement. And I've gotten it so far, so I think we can probably do the November auction. That'll be solidified later within the next few weeks. How many domain names do you think you need to run an auction? I want to keep it exclusive. We've kicked around ideas from a couple hundred, but I'm thinking I'm going to do 50 to 75 because I'd like to give personal attention to each one. Our marketing team can do direct mailing and emailing and calling. We've got call people set up in-house. So we want to give personal attention to each name. So if tablets.com comes across, let's direct market and call and mail to all the computer manufacturers and retailers. If shoes.com comes across, let's do the same thing. So I'm not looking for big volume so we can make a killing. I'm looking for a small quantity of names that I think will sell. So we can have a successful auction and keep the momentum going. And if I own tablets.com, well, I would be you, right? That's correct. That was a plug for my name if there's anybody listening. No, all right, but if I own tablets.com, can I set a reserve price? I will not take less than, 150, 250 for it. And typical in the auction industry that very few things carry reserves. It's more about liquidity, but again, I've talked to the guys and the founders who are incredibly accessible. We talk multiple times a day with the guys that founded the company. I mean, they're so cool. Yeah, we can do reserves as long as they're reasonable, And I know domain owners may be hesitant. This is the first auction, so pop a name in there at a reasonable reserve. If we don't market it to our people and sell it, we've all lost nothing, and you've honestly hit several million people that have seen your name in the auction. So it's kind of a win-win for all, but we'd prefer no reserves, but I think we're going to take some reserves when it's applicable for certain names. Okay. And you will help registrants set the reserve pricing on their domain name so it's reasonable? Yeah, we need to kind of talk back and forth and do a little bit of valuations and do kind of realistic. Again, I've told people this isn't the auction to put something in there for $3 million and hope somebody big shows up. It's while bids may go into 7 figures, let's start at low with a reasonable reserve, or let's start at low at the absolute minimum you would take for it, entice people to bid, get people interested. The Heritage founders always say you need people emotionally invested in your auctions, and if you can start something pretty low, I mean, people keep looking at it every day, and then they're married to it after 3 weeks, and so that's the kind of thing that we're looking for. It's a liquidity event, but it's not fire sale type stuff, so I want to make a distinction between that.
Yeah. So you said you spoke to Rick Schwartz, who has the traffic conference coming up in October. Have you discussed actually running their auction online in sync with them doing it live in the event?
Yeah, we did talk a little bit about that, and I don't want to share any private info that is between me and Rick, but I think there's an opportunity for us to help. I just know that we couldn't pull it all together this time. But I think having the legitimacy of a company like Heritage Auctions and the technology that we bring to the table of the web and the phone bidding and the service of live auctioneers, I mean, we can handle it and promote it. So I think that's a good marriage for the domain conferences and the auctions going forward. So I think maybe see something like that in the future. But again, we wanted to let Rick do his thing, maybe jump in with ours later. Didn't want to time it weird with Domain Fest, which is January, February. So we're trying not to step on anybody's toes, and that includes brokers. So that's something we can discuss at any point too.
Great. So let's talk about the domain names that you'd love to have in your auction. Your LL, your triple L domain name, so it's ab.com or it's xyz.com. How do you personally look at valuing 2-letter and 3-letter domain names, Aron?
Yeah, the reason I like those so much is because there are direct comparable sales. Like we mentioned tablets.com before. What do you compare it to that's been sold? I mean, we all know that all these are unique in nature. They're all one of ones, you know. So at least the 2 and 3 letters have other comparables. And while there are a crazy wide range of sales, I mean, Facebook paid $8.5 million for FB.com, but I bought 2letter.coms for 50 grand before. So it's kind of, well, that's kind of strange, but it's easy to do comparable sales. It's easy to kind of get an eyeball gut feeling. I know a lot of professional domain investors talk about gut feeling, and it's kind of hard to explain, but a lot of it's common sense. Like, is that name priced fairly when you inquire about it? But I think the comparable sales, which is why I'm really going for the 2 and 3 letters, 2 and 3 numbers, there's direct comparables to where we can give like an estimated price range, because if you've seen any big auctions like Christie's and they send out the catalogs and here's Shoeless Joe Jackson's baseball mitt, there's always an estimated range at the bottom that we think the name may sell for to give the buyers an idea of what would be a fair price to pay. And a lot of times it goes above that estimated range. But that's kind of the thing that I'm looking for. You know, how do you estimate what tablets.com's worth? You know, we'll put something like that in the auction for sure, but I'd love to load it with the 2 and 3 letter names to where the investors can really understand, hey, this would be a good buy at this price. So hopefully that explained it and I didn't just talk in a big circle.
Well, it's not clear enough for me, though. So if I just look at ll.coms, because you're not looking at any other domain names. You don't want to see any biz, any .me's, any .lees. None of those.
Probably .coms for now.
Probably .coms. And so if it's ab.com or it's dc.com, what is the range that you've ever seen LL sell for? 50,000 up to 8.5 million?
Yeah, I know now, 8.5 million. I know now there is not a single LL owner that would sell for less than 100 or 150.
Okay.
So I'm kind of looking for some that would want to do it on the lower end of the 150, 200, 250, 300.
Yeah.
And I know people that are shooting for, let's get 750, a million. Those aren't right for this auction. And it's hard to evaluate. I mean, the names are worth what somebody's willing to pay. Johnson
well, and how good the letters are, right? There are better letters than worse letters?
Yeah, I mean, I sold YQ.com for just over 100 grand, I think, a couple years ago because it's got a Q in it. But to an investor, I think that'd be a great name to buy. Just hang on to it. It's one of the 676. And again, a lot of it has to do with the domain owner. If people are shooting for several $1 million just for whatever reason I'm holding out, it's not right for this auction.
Right.
I think every LL owner knows that the low end is 152, 250, 300. Mm-hmm. So let's get a few of them in there at that value and see what happens. And I think we can not convince the investors, but educate them enough that this is kind of the range that'd be smart to pay, you know?
Makes sense. And so what about 3-letter domain names? What's the range? What do you think the lowest would sell for nowadays?
Yeah, same thing. You know, a lot of non-premium ones go for the 5 grand range, but I'm kind of looking for the $10,000 to $15,000 ones. I know there's always what DJI just sold for a fortune to a Chinese company. So I know that there's outliers like that in the data, but we're looking for,
just like FB.com. It's an outlier because a company who has those initials just wants to own it.
Absolutely. It's how motivated is the buyer. So we're looking for like the $10,000 to $15,000 range. And overall in the auction, I'm thinking names from 5,000 up to maybe mid six figures. So that's kind of the range I'm wanting to work with the 1 and 2 word.coms. But the three letter names, if anybody's got any that they're looking for 10 or 15 for, something like that,
Yep.
I'd like to put them in there, and they may go sky high. They may go for 10. It's not one of those you have no idea, but we're going to promote it better than anybody ever could on their own, which is the exciting thing.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about numbers then. If you have, and numbers is something that I just do not get at all. I know Domain Shane loves his numbers, and he gets onto CN.com, and 114 just sold. Because I had no idea that it was the information number in China.
I missed that one.
So let's just talk about NN.com. So 11.com, 99.com, 77.com, or 74.com. How do you look at the value range on those?
To me, it's similar. It's very similar to the letters, except there's even a smaller number of two numbers.
Right.
There's 99 of them if you do the O1s and O2s. So, and those are big with the Chinese and Asian buyers because the numbers that they relate to them, they have meaning behind them. So I think the NN and the 3N things are going to be the exact same. Let's kind of eyeball them. Let's get some comparable sales. Let's try to show the buyer that, hey, these are very similar that just sold for these prices in the last couple of years. So if you paid X, I would feel comfortable recommending you buy that.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're going to get some. I don't know a whole lot of NN buyers or sellers. I know a lot of LL people just because I have a few of them and have had a bunch of them. So I don't anticipate a lot of numbers being in the auction. And I think those buyers are in China mainly, and so I don't know what kind of presence we have, but I do know that our 850,000 registered bidders are across 187 countries. Wow. So if you want to reach some people in Japan, by God, the auction may do it. So
So there's probably less of a pool of people buying numbers because they don't understand them as well. If you have a lot in Western Europe or North America, let's say. But there's less of them, so they might be a higher value. So if you're looking at LLs.com going for 100, 300,000 range, what would you say the NN.coms go for? Is it less or is it more? Is it the same?
I'd say about the same range. And again, I'm not up with Shane and all them because I know he does a bunch of 4 numbers, but I think all the big sales are in China. So I know a lot of the big LL sales are Merrill Lynch and Barnes & Noble and American Airlines. So that's relevant here.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've been focusing on more. But I think the big number sales are in China and Asia where the numbers have so much meaning in their daily lives. But I would think the NNs would be valued the same as the LLs. I think it's easy for me just to eyeball them and say, 74.com, do you want 175 grand for it? I think we could probably do that. Let's go for it, But 74.com, you want 750? This probably isn't the right venue,
Right.
So I've had to tell that story a few times to people, but it's fine. It's an auction. It's about liquidity. So.
Okay, and then NNN.coms, you think you're looking for $5,000 to $15,000, maybe a little bit higher than that range?
Yeah, probably 10 to 15. 10 to 15. I know many 3 letters and 3 numbers sell all day long for 30 and 35 and 40. But I'd like to put them in lower and give them a chance to actually get up there if we get a couple people interested. But I just don't think putting a 3 number in there starting at 40 or 45 or 50 is really going to get attention. Like I think if we start them at 10 or 15, that's kind of why I'm throwing those prices out there.
Right. And so people need to realize that this is an auction. This is while you may allow a reserve, this is a liquidity event. It's not you're holding on to what's the good Chinese number? 4 or 7? I can't remember. 77.com, let's say. And you think you can get 500,000 for it, and you're just waiting. Like if you put it in an auction, you want to sell it because you need the cash. You want to free up some investment capital for some other opportunity or something. Yeah. So you can't go in asking for retail on an auction.
Definitely. And although we think some bids may go up there, like if we put tablets in and contact all the people, and the auction lets the buyers know this is serious, this is a one-time event, the thing is going to sell.
Right.
Apple, Samsung, Sony, Best Buy. You better show up and bid on this thing if you ever wanted to. So while they may go that high, like you said, it's a liquidity event. It's not fire sale type stuff.
Right.
And although big windfalls and home runs and end user sales are great, a lot of us need turnover to keep the thing going and keep it chugging. So that's kind of what we offer as opportunity to turn them over, get some liquidity, get some cash, and keep moving on.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, here's the final question for you, Aaron. If you look back at your early domain name flipping days, so you've been doing it for about 7 years now. So if you look back at the early days, what advice do you have for people that are new to the industry that want to get up to speed as quickly as they can and generate some cash in flipping domain names?
I know a lot of people mistakenly started off thinking, I'm just going to register a bunch of names, I'm going to buy 5,000 names, and it truly is quality over quantity. I think the DN Journal cover story back in 2009 about the same time as Symbolics, I was featured in there, and I gave the same advice of, if you can pick up 1 or 2 or 3 really good solid names, that'll do more for you than if you go hand register 1,000 of them as lottery tickets and just kind of pray. I mean, I think the days of doing things like that are almost over. I know there's a lot of good drops and a lot of good hand registrations left, but I think if you can pick up 1 or 2 or 3 and kind of get your foot in the door, and a lot of people think, how do I know if a name is premium?
Yeah.
It's kind of, if you have to explain what the name is, I don't think it's premium. I get a lot of that. Here's a submission. Would you take this kind of made up word and it could mean this, and it's a plural of a term, and that's probably not premium, So if you can pick up, even for a couple $1,000s, there's names out there, 2-word names for a couple $1,000s. Get a couple of those, try to flip them, put yourself out there, and honestly, your site and domain blogs and stuff like that, I mean, I've checked your site recently, and it's become just an incredible resource how you have the categories listed. And if anybody wants to learn, listening to the experts explain how they got started and what they did is far better than just spray and pray. Let me shotgun 500 names. So
instead of buying 1,000 names at, let's say, $10 a piece, so you're in it for $10,000 initial cash outlay plus another $10,000 every year. You're saying take that $10,000, go buy 2 $5,000 domain names or 3 $3,000 domain names.
Definitely. And I mean, I've all but given away a couple good 2-word names in the past couple of years that would be great for somebody to start off with, just for whatever reason. I'm like, I'm kind of sick of that. Like, I had imagesharing.com, which is great with all the photo sharing, and I gave it away as part of a domain trade I made 6 months ago. And I'm like, I would have sold that for nothing to somebody if they wanted to start an image sharing site or an app, or just wanted to hang on to it, or see got users. So those kind of deals are out there. I'd go for the 2-word ones, even pick up a 3-letter one. Those are easy to flip, stuff like that. But quality over quantity. Don't just try to dream up things. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Do what's been proven that the other people have suggested that you do.
So if somebody does pick up a 3-letter domain name, or let's say it's a 4-letter, but it actually has some meaning, what's the best way that you would advise to flip it?
I'd say the 3-letter names. I think forums are really good. I think forums are good. I have sold all my names by just direct outreach to whoever I think may be interested. Start building a network. Start reaching out to other domain people. Start reaching out to companies you think may want them. Like the 2letter.coms, a lot of times they've come to me, so make it available on the website. Put a for sale banner, put a for sale sign. If you go to hy.com right now, I've got just a for sale inquiry box, and I get several per day just because that box is on there. Whether if I would have monetized it or tried to do something else with it, I've gotten 0.
hy.com, that seems really good. Like, it seems like a startup would want to buy that does some sort of, I don't know, it's like hi.
It seems good. I used to have a little logo with a hand like hi, and I know that HY is how some people spell hi over I don't know where and stuff. So I know there's several Chinese companies with HY initials, but totally different story. That's one I am holding out. Let me get a big windfall one of these days, but there are.
So you're not going to put that one in auction?
I might, just because I really believe in this process, and I've always wanted to get my names in front of some people with money that could make a statement, could do some things. So I'm excited. I'm going to put several of mine.
Well, that would be the true test, Aaron. If you believe in the marketing and the power of your 800,000 at Heritage Auctions to put in tablets.com and hy.com with, a low or a no reserve auction price, that would convince me, buddy.
And I know you're calling me out on it, and you will read and hear about it soon that I am doing exactly what I promised. So
awesome.
You will find out that I'm putting a few of my names in there, and because I believe in it, and we'll see.
That's great. And clearly Heritage believes in it because they own HA.com.
Actually, I don't know how many people in the company have come up to me as the resident domain expert because everybody's got names. I registered a name back in 5 years ago. I'm like, I don't even want to hear it. If you have to explain it to me, just like, how many people have knocked on my door and been like, what do you think this is worth? So they've come to me saying, do you think that was a smart move? Do you think, we paid fair for it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I think it's one of the greatest moves you've ever made because if you drive in uptown Dallas, AJ.com's on the side of the building. It's on the business cards. It's awesome. So
I can't tell you the number of times that I've misspelled Sotheby's.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And most people don't go to Sotheby's, but we actually have a relationship with them here in the town that I live because we have a print magazine and they have a real estate office here. And so we work with them for real estate leads and try and spell Sotheby's. Oh my gosh. But if they had SO.com or S.com. Yeah.
Any 2-word companies, 2 and 3-word companies. I mean, if you can just shorten that thing down and you can slap HA.com somewhere, and that's what a premium name does. If you could slap, I keep using tablets because I'm not that creative, but if you could slap tablets.com somewhere, you know exactly what the company does without having to go into it and explain it. And I think the companies have realized the value in that. But they've kind of rebranded themselves as HA now, and kind of, we're Heritage Auctions, but we're known as HA, and it really wasn't that big of a process. I mean, a lot of companies think, oh my gosh, we're going to have to do all this stuff to go to AA.com instead of American Airlines. And it's like, are you kidding me? If you fly American, AA is right there on the wing. I mean, it's awesome. So companies are realizing that. A lot of Fortune 500 have them right now. So I think we can get people like that to show up at the auction. So anyways, I'm really excited. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, but I think my excitement kind of is resonating out of my pores for.
Yeah. All right. I lied. I got one more question for you, Aaron, because you've said it a couple of times now. If you have to explain it to somebody, then it probably doesn't have value. And I'm one of the guys that I'm relatively new to the industry. I sort of look at myself as from outside the industry. And I look at a name like tablets.com. Nowadays, I understand it because I can go and look up the search volume. I can look at who's buying advertising and how much they're paying. But if you had to explain it if I hadn't done these interviews for the past couple of years, I would be like, well, what are you going to do? I'm not a tablet company. It doesn't have any value to me. What am I going to do? Sell tablets? But it's not Best Buy where you sell everything, or Amazon where you sell everything under the sun. So what do you mean exactly when you say if you have to explain it to somebody?
Well, using that example, some people still don't get it, which is totally fine. Like, that comes up in conversation.
Right, like you would have sold it by now because I know you've had it for sale for a while.
Yeah, I'm shooting for the sky how much you want? 5 million, whatever. I'm not desperate to sell it, but if one's going to hit the big time, it may be that one. So, But a lot of people just dismiss it like, oh, hey, tablets.com, that's cool. Well, what would you do with it? What would I do with it? I've had that conversation with end users, like a couple major retailers. Well, what would we do with it? I'm like, I don't know. What's cars.com doing with their name, or hotels.com, or anything big? So some people get it and some people don't, which I know everybody's not going to completely get it from now on. And tablets does have more than one meaning. If the industry goes under, I could sell pills or something,
Right.
So, but yeah, a lot of that, if you have to explain it, was kind of in reference to a lot of people with made up spellings of words, pluralizing things that aren't necessary, putting an LY at the end of something and it could mean this. That's probably not a smart move. While these funky little Weebly type, Zargly, type names, some of them have stuck. That's not the type of lottery ticket name I would buy if I was starting out. I'd buy something that has some meaning, or a 3-letter acronym, or 2 words that go well together, not shoe, chair, like you want something that actually goes together. And again, that's how uncreative I am. I saw a chair and
image sharing, that makes sense. Everybody wants to share images. It'd probably be better as picture sharing, or I don't know,
photo sharing.
Sharing. Yeah,
I tried to buy it from that guy, but I'm not talking 50 grand. I'd have sold the thing for $1,000 to somebody if they'd have caught me on the right day, which I think that's a great name to get started with, So I think there's deals like that. It takes a little bit of hustle. I've alluded that I have stayed up all night back when I was starting, just emailing everybody I could think of with names that popped in my head. Now I know that there's programs and stuff that's a little better for that, but it takes hustle, and it takes 1,000 people telling you to take a hike, but one person saying, that sounds good, I think now's about time to sell, like symbolics.com, and that's how you get rolling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right, if you have follow-up questions for Aaron, please post them in the comments below the video, and we'll ask him to come back and answer as many as he can. Aaron, if someone wants to contact you and say thank you for coming on the show, and sharing, or if they want to contact you and say, hey, Aron, here's a couple of names that I think might fit your auction that I'd be willing to go with no low reserve. What's the best way for them to connect with you?
You can go to ha.com/IP or ha.com/domains, and you can get me through there. There's a little form on there where you can sign up for an update, and we can blast everybody saying, here's our first auction, here's a submission. If you want to directly get me personally, you can do Aron M at ha.com. That's Aron with one A, A-R-O-N, letter M for Meystedt at ha.com, and I'm usually quick to respond. And finally, if you want to go to xf.com, which I still have that site up, it's my personal site. You can go to xf.com. There's a form on there, and that's tethered to my hip on my phone, so I will respond. And if the names aren't a fit for the auction, there may be a way to work together in the future. I have to be really picky this first time around, but I think it's going to go well, and I'm excited for the opportunity, and I think it's really good for the industry.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, and I've signed up on your mailing list, so I can't wait to see what comes down the pipe.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the opportunity to get this out there.
My pleasure. Aron Meystedt, founder and director of the Intellectual Property and Domain Division at ha.com. Thanks for coming on the show, sharing your knowledge about pricing the domains and how you're going to move forward at ha.com. And thanks for being a domain Sherpa.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time.